rule.
You only became somebody because Mom allowed it. Don't forget that. That's what Brooke said to me. No raised voice, no tantrum, just a plain sentence delivered like a tranquilizer dart. Silent, small, and aimed straight for the heart. She was scraping her fork across her plate, not even looking up. I had just asked her to clear the table. Just that. Rachel kept drying the same dish she'd already dried twice. Her lips stayed shut. The sink dripped once, twice, then silence. Noah glanced at me from across the kitchen island, then went back to his phone like he'd heard nothing at all. I didn't say a word back. Not then. I took another bite of food I no longer tasted and stared into the grain of the table. I counted the small scratches and nicks, the ones that come from years of birthday candles, spilled juice, dropped homework, and Sunday night leftovers reheated too many times. The kind of marks you get when you're a family, or at least pretending to be one. My name's Tom. I'm 43. I met Rachel 9 years ago at a gas station off Route 70. She was standing beside her car with the hood popped and a crying toddler strapped in the back seat. Brooke was still buckled in, kicking her heels against the seat and yelling for her mom. I offered to help. She said no at first. Then she said yes. That was how it started. 2 years later, I married her. We moved into my house just outside of Philadelphia. Not a mansion, but not a shack either. I'd bought it before the housing bubble burst. Locked in a decent rate, fixed it up on weekends, made it livable with my own hands. The mortgage had been mine long before Brooke or Noah ever knew my name. But when Rachel moved in with her kids, the space didn't feel like mine anymore. It became something else. Compromise. A borrowed stage for someone else's family drama. At first, I thought I was stepping into a life that needed mending. A broken home that just needed a man willing to show up and stay. And I stayed. God help me, I stayed. Through the tantrums, the weekend custody handoffs, the late-night calls when Jeremy would bail on plans and leave Rachel trying to explain disappointment to a child again. I showed up. Every single time. But it wasn't enough. Jeremy was always in the background. Not physically, not in any consistent, useful way, but in the way mold creeps behind drywall. Slowly, quietly, eating through things you thought were solid. He'd call on birthdays and show up late with overpriced gifts. An iPad, limited edition sneakers, concert tickets he couldn't afford. Rachel used to roll her eyes and say he was compensating. I believed her. I believed she saw what I saw. A man chasing clout instead of raising his kids. I believed we were on the same side. But sides blur when silence enters the picture. The first time Brooke contradicted me outright, she was 11. I'd asked her to wash her cereal bowl before leaving for school. She crossed her arms and said, "My real dad says you can't tell me what to do." Rachel heard it and said nothing. I remember watching her lean against the sink, biting the inside of her cheek. I waited for her to say something. She didn't. Later that night, I brought it up. Rachel sighed, brushed her hair behind her ear, and said, "She's just trying to process the situation. Don't take it personally." I nodded, because I wanted to believe this was temporary, that patience would win, that effort would matter. But poison doesn't need to be loud to kill. It just needs time. Jeremy didn't yell or fight. He whispered. He planted seeds. And over time, his kids began to sound like him, not in voice but in tone. Detached, sarcastic, condescending. "You're not even my dad. You're just a guy Mom married. If I need permission, I'll ask my real father. Don't act like you've always been here. You just showed up." The first time Noah said something like that, he was 12. He was supposed to be doing homework, but he'd snuck his Nintendo Switch into his lap under the table. I took it away and told him he could have it back after his assignment. He stood up, looked me dead in the eye. "You can't take that from me. You're not my real dad." I felt something shift in the room, like the floor had tilted half a degree. I looked over at Rachel, hoping she'd say something, but she didn't even look up. She just flipped the page in her magazine and said, "Let's not turn this into a whole thing." That phrase. I've heard it 100 times now. Let's not turn this into a thing. As if parenting is only valid when it's quiet. As if discipline is only useful when it doesn't ruffle feathers. As if my authority ends where their discomfort begins. Eventually, I stopped trying to discipline. Not because I didn't care, but because I realized no one would back me up. I became a placeholder, a ghost with a wallet, present but not permitted, needed but never wanted. And still I stayed. I showed up to school recitals and soccer games. I volunteered for chaperone duties. I covered braces, new phones, club fees, summer camps, insurance deductibles. I took Noah to the ER when he broke his wrist skateboarding and held his hand through the x-ray. I bought Brooke her first real winter coat, the kind she circled in catalogs for weeks. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I believed it mattered. But the return on that investment was silence. Or worse, sarcasm. You just do stuff to make yourself feel like a dad. No one asked you to be here. My real dad would never be this annoying. And that brings us back to tonight. Brooke, 16 now, full of someone else's opinions. I'd made her grilled salmon and green beans. She ate 2 bites and said she wasn't hungry. Left her plate in the sink, walked out of the kitchen. I followed and said, "You could at least clear your plate." That's when she turned and said it. "You only became somebody because Mom allowed it. Don't forget that." Not shouted, not spat, just declared, like it was obvious, like it was a fact written in stone. Rachel said nothing. The room didn't breathe. And I stood there with that spatula still in my hand, my eyes tracing the backsplash tile behind her like I could disappear into the grout lines. What do you say to that? What do you say when a child you raised looks at you and says you're only something because someone else said you could be? What do you say when the woman you married, the one you gave years of your life to, can't even look up to correct her daughter? I didn't answer. I didn't scold. I didn't explain. I walked into the study, pulled out the file cabinet, and retrieved the folder marked house, mortgage, deed, insurance, utility bills, all of it. I laid it on the kitchen table and said, "Just so no one forgets who made this life possible." Then I walked out. Nobody interrupted the next time I spoke. There's a particular kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It doesn't soothe or calm. It waits. It measures you. And that's what settled over our house after that night. Brooke never brought up the folder I'd left on the table. She walked past it like it wasn't there. Like the truth, my truth, was just another thing she didn't have to look at if she kept her eyes forward. Noah barely spoke to me at all. He still took the gas money I left on the counter each week, still used the Wi-Fi I paid for, still sat on the couch I hauled into this house with my own hands. But he didn't make eye contact. He didn't say thank you. He became a shadow that rolled its eyes and closed doors too hard. Rachel kept pretending. That was her specialty. She cleaned up the folder without asking what it meant. She didn't ask why I brought it out, what I was feeling, or what had finally pushed me to break the illusion. She folded each page back into its sleeve like she was repacking a loaded gun. 2 days later, she cooked lasagna and asked me how work was going. Like nothing had happened. Like her daughter hadn't cut my knees out from under me in our own kitchen. I answered politely. I always had. But something in me had changed. That night, I opened my laptop and began pulling records. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. 8 years. That's how long I'd been part of their lives. And in those 8 years, I had tracked every expense, habitually, methodically. It wasn't about control. It was about survival. That's how I've always lived. When you come from nothing, you count every dollar that leaves your hand. Now I wanted to see it. So I pulled everything. Bank statements, credit card logs, receipts still crumpled in old folders, tuition payments, school trips, medical bills, copays, orthodontist invoices, dance classes, soccer cleats, guitar lessons, birthday decorations, back-to-school shopping, SAT tutors. Even those sneakers Jeremy had posted on Instagram, the ones he bragged about buying Brooke, they were on my American Express. I matched the charge to the day. I printed everything. I made copies. I built a ledger that told the truth, line by line. 2 columns. Mine. His. Mine full. His. Empty. Aside from a few random deposits labeled child support, always late, always partial, always an excuse waiting. I didn't do it to collect debt. I did it to hold up a mirror. The following weekend, I asked to meet Jeremy. We agreed to a coffee shop near the train station. Neutral ground. He showed up in mirrored sunglasses and a quarter-zip jacket like he was about to coach someone's intramural team. He smiled too wide and said, "Tom, long time, man." I slid the folder across the table without saying a word. He raised an eyebrow but opened it. First page, 2 columns. Mine on the left, his on the right. He flipped a few more pages, then laughed. "I never asked you to pay for any of this," he said. "Exactly. You never offered either," I replied. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "So what? You keeping score now? Is that what this is about?" "No. This is about facts. Not opinion. Not narrative. Not what the kids think happened. Just numbers." He scoffed. "You trying to embarrass me?" "No," I said, calm as concrete. "I'm setting boundaries. Starting this month, I won't be paying for anything non-essential for your kids. If they need clothes, food, a roof, that's covered. But if Brooke wants new shoes or Noah wants gas money, tell them to ask the man who they say makes the rules." His smile thinned. "You're trying to turn them against me." "No," I said again. "You did that to yourself. I'm just turning off the faucet." He muttered something under his breath. I didn't care enough to ask what. I placed a final document on the table, financial responsibility transfer forms. Not legal, not binding, just a symbolic line in the sand. One I planned to follow with or without his signature. I stood up, nodded once, and walked out. I didn't look back. That was the first domino. When Brooke's phone got cut off a few weeks later, she stormed into the living room holding it like it had personally betrayed her. "What did you do?" she snapped. "I was fixing a chair leg. I didn't even look up." "Ask the people you said make the rules." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not footing the bill for a phone I only exist to be disrespected on." Her mouth opened, closed. Then she turned to Rachel. "Seriously?" Rachel sighed. "We can talk about it later." But we didn't. Not really. Noah's turn came next. His soccer club fees bounced. Then his Xbox Live subscription failed. He confronted me at the bottom of the stairs, his face red and voice louder than usual. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I paused, looked him in the eye. "Because rules come with responsibilities. And for 8 years, I played the father role while your real one collected applause for doing nothing. Now you want his name to carry the authority? Let it carry the bills, too." He didn't reply, just walked away. But the dam had started to crack. 2 weeks later, Brooke came home early. No music in her headphones. No makeup. No dramatic entrance. Just a duffel bag in her hand and red eyes that hadn't slept. She found Rachel in the kitchen and dropped the bag by her feet. "He said it," she whispered. "Dad. He told us to make James so uncomfortable that you'd break up with him. That if we pushed hard enough, you'd pick us instead." Rachel froze, knife in hand, half-sliced onion on the cutting board. "He said that." Brooke nodded, voice breaking. "But he doesn't do anything. James does." She didn't cry. That was the worst part. She didn't even look at me when she said it. Later that night, I was in the garage oiling the hinge on the side door. That's where she found me. Brooke. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, nervous. "James?" I didn't stop working. She swallowed. "I'm sorry I said you weren't allowed to make rules. That was messed up." I nodded. "Thank you. That took guts." "Are you still mad?" "Yes," I said. "But not at you." She blinked. "Then who?" "At the man who put you in that position. You're not a bill, Brooke. You're a person. And if you show me respect, I'll always show up for you." She didn't answer, just turned and walked back inside. That was the closest thing to peace we'd had in years. But peace has a price. Rachel and Jeremy had a screaming match in the school parking lot the following week. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from the guidance counselor of all people. He accused her of turning the kids against him. of letting me overstep. Rachel didn't flinch. Her voice carried across the blacktop. You did that. You told our kids to disrespect my husband. Because you couldn't handle another man actually showing up where you wouldn't. Word got back to me. People stared longer than usual when I picked up Noah that Friday. Like I'd finally been unmasked. Like the quiet guy in the corner had made himself known. I didn't scream. Didn't throw a fit. Didn't post any long rants on Facebook. I just stopped paying for the lie. No more hidden subsidies. No more quiet support for a script I didn't write. If Jeremy wanted the title of father, he could start wearing the weight of it. The next month, Brooke's friend's birthday came around. She asked if she could borrow money for a gift. I'd love to, I said. Ask your dad. She looked away. Noah needed new cleats. Same answer. Rachel, to her credit, didn't argue anymore. Maybe she knew the line had been crossed. Maybe she felt the damage differently now that it was her kids feeling the echo of choices made in whispers. But the kids, they started noticing. Not just what Jeremy didn't do, but what I had done all along. That was the beginning of the end. I remember the day Rachel turned. Not gradually, not subtly. She snapped. Right in front of the school parking lot. No cameras, no audience, no warning. Jeremy had just stepped out of his car, looking like the aftermath of a midlife crisis. Aviators, leather jacket, jeans too tight for a man pushing 50. I was standing off to the side, engine still running, Noah's cleats muddy on the seat behind me. He pointed a finger before he even closed his door. This is what you wanted, huh? He said to Rachel. You poisoned them. You made them hate me. Rachel didn't flinch. No, you did that all by yourself. Jeremy laughed. That smug kind of laugh people use when they've lost the argument but still want to control the room. You're unbelievable. Dragging lawyers into this? Making your husband the boss of my kids? Rachel's voice didn't rise. It went cold. You told them to disrespect my husband. Because you couldn't stand the fact that another man was doing the job you walked away from. He froze. I didn't intervene. I stayed where I was, arms crossed. Not a referee. Not a bystander. Just a man watching a lie get dissected in public. I never told them to disrespect him, Jeremy said. Bullshit. Rachel shot back. You coached them. You twisted them. And now they're unraveling. He muttered something, climbed back in his car, and peeled out of the lot like the coward he'd always been. Later that night, Rachel came into the garage where I was reassembling the pressure washer. One of those mindless tasks I used to keep my hands from making fists. She leaned against the doorframe. You heard what happened? I did. Silence stretched between us. I should have said something earlier, she added. Yeah, I said. You should have. Her eyes fell to the floor. I thought, if I gave it time, they'd come around. I didn't want to force it. I didn't want to make them feel like they had to choose. They already chose. She nodded. No defense. No excuses. And that was it. Not a reconciliation. Not a repair. Just acknowledgement. Sometimes that's all you get when the damage has already been done. From then on, things shifted. Not loudly. Quietly. Like sand settling after a wave pulls back. I didn't scream. Didn't lecture. Didn't throw plates or threaten to leave. I just stopped paying for the lie. I stopped fueling the fantasy that Jeremy could ghost his kids, whisper venom, and still be treated like some invisible patriarch whose throne I was stealing. No more backfilling the gaps he left behind. No more quiet enabling. No more invisible subsidies cushioning his absence. Brooke needed money for a school trip. I said no. Noah wanted to join an indoor league. I said no. They looked at Rachel. She looked at me. And then nothing. She didn't argue anymore. Didn't run interference. At first, the kids were stunned. Not angry, confused. Like someone had moved the walls of their house an inch overnight and they kept bumping into corners that weren't there yesterday. Then they got angry. Noah shouted. Brooke slammed doors. Rachel weathered it like someone absorbing waves against a cracked hull. I kept doing what I'd always done, working, paying bills, making repairs, buying groceries. But only the basics. Nothing extra. Nothing that could be used against me later as a prop in someone else's story. Respect was now a condition of privilege. Noah tested the boundary first. "Why are you doing this?" he asked me one night. "Why now?" I was tightening a leaky faucet in the bathroom. I didn't stop moving. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm just not pretending anymore." "Pretending what?" "That I'm a father in your life when you only see me as an ATM. He didn't answer, just walked away. That was the beginning of his silence. Real silence. Not defiance. Not attitude. Just absence. He started coming home later, eating in his room, answering in one-word grunts. Brooke was louder. One night she threw her phone down on the couch. "It's not fair," she snapped. "You can't just change the rules." "I didn't," I said, flipping through a bill. "I just started following the ones you made." "What does that mean?" "It means you said I wasn't allowed to make decisions like a father. So now I'm not paying like one." "That's so petty." "No. Petty is using your mother's silence to insult me in my own house while I pay for your Spotify and your Uber Eats." She blinked. "I didn't." "You did," I said. "And now the bill comes due." She left the room. Didn't slam the door this time. Progress, I guess. The house became something else after that. Not a home. A checkpoint. A quiet battlefield between what I had given and what I was no longer willing to give again. The fridge was stocked. The lights stayed on. The internet worked. But everything else? Gone. No more gas money. No more new clothes. No more casual rides to parties. If it wasn't a necessity, it wasn't my problem. Jeremy didn't step up. Of course he didn't. When Brooke asked him about her phone bill, he said it was too much right now. When Noah mentioned club fees, Jeremy called them a scam. Suddenly, the king they'd crowned was missing when it mattered most. And I didn't fill the gap. They stopped asking. Brooke started picking up weekend shifts at a coffee shop. Noah borrowed Rachel's car when he could, then walked when he couldn't. One night, I heard him slam the front door, muttering that Jeremy never answers and always has a reason. Rachel found me later, sitting on the back porch. She slid the screen door open and stepped out barefoot. "He called Jeremy for help," she said. "Jeremy said maybe next month." I didn't reply. She sat beside me. "He's seeing it now. Too late." She hesitated. "You're not wrong. I wish it hadn't taken this." I nodded. "So do I. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't always come with a knife. Sometimes it comes with years of silence, of complicity, of small omissions that pile into something crushing. Rachel had let it happen, and the kids had made their choice. I wasn't punishing them. I was just done holding a structure together that everyone else insisted didn't exist. Eventually, even Brooke cracked. She came home late one night. Eyes red, eyeliner smeared, keys clutched tight. "I talked to Dad," she said. "I asked him why he told us to push you away. I didn't speak. He said you were trying to replace him, that you were brainwashing us." I nodded. "That tracks." She sat down across from me, legs tucked under her like she was small again, like she didn't know where to place her anger. I didn't know what to believe. "I know," she sniffed. "You were always just there. I thought that meant you didn't care. Being quiet isn't the same as being absent." She looked up. "Are you done with us?" "No," I said. "But I'm done pretending this wasn't always conditional." She frowned. "Conditional? On respect," I said. "On effort. On truth. You wanted Jeremy's rules? Then you get Jeremy's effort. I won't carry the weight for a man who whispers and runs." "I didn't ask you to," she said, defensive. "I know. That was the problem." We sat in silence. And then she whispered it, like it hurt. "I think I miss you." I exhaled. "Then start showing up. Not with gifts. Not with apologies. But with consistency. With honesty. With something earned. We're still not there. Not really. But the ground is starting to shift." She asked for a ride to work the next morning. Not Rachel. Me. Said thank you when I dropped her off. "Noah handed me his phone last week. broken screen, and asked if I could help him fix it. Not buy it. Fix it. I ordered the part. Had him sit with me while I replaced it. He watched, asked questions, said he didn't know I knew how to do stuff like that. 8 years in this house, I said. You never asked. He nodded. Quiet. Real quiet. That's where we are now. Not a family. But maybe not strangers anymore. It was Noah's game that did it. Final match of the season. Cold bleachers. Damp air. The kind of night where your breath lingers longer than your voice. Rachel was already there, wrapped in that old green scarf she never remembers buying. Brooke sat beside her, legs crossed, eyes on the field like she was trying to see something more than just a scoreboard. Jeremy showed up 10 minutes late, Starbucks in hand. Designer shades still on, even under the stadium lights. He stood behind the bleachers, didn't sit. Said a few things to Rachel, low, performative, like he wanted to be seen co-parenting. Noah scored in the second half. Corner kick. He rose above 2 defenders and headed the ball clean into the net. Perfect finish. He didn't look for his mother. Or Jeremy. He looked at me, pumped his fist once. Small smile. Not huge. Not dramatic. Just real. I didn't cheer like a madman. I didn't jump up and down. I just stood and clapped. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to belonging. Later, in the parking lot, Brooke slid into the back seat of my truck without being asked. Can we stop for breakfast? She asked. Sure. Can I get the French toast? It's like $12, I said. I'll pay half from my allowance. I laughed. Just a little. Deal. We didn't talk much during the meal. Noah kept checking his phone. Brooke asked the waitress about refills. Rachel reached for the bill. I stopped her. Paid it myself. No one argued. Something had changed. Not everything. Not all at once. But something. There were no speeches that morning. No teary reconciliations. No dramatic confessions in the middle of a diner. Just quiet. Just coffee. Just a shared meal that didn't feel transactional. On the drive home, Brooke dozed off. Noah stared out the window. Rachel reached over and rested her hand on mine. It didn't fix everything. It didn't erase what had been said, or what hadn't been said, but it was real. And sometimes, real is all that's left after the fantasy burns down. We still have our bad days. Brooke still rolls her eyes when I ask her to turn the music down. Noah still leaves wet towels on the floor. Rachel still hesitates sometimes before backing me up in front of them. The damage is deep. The roots run old. But now there's space to rebuild, not because I forced it, but because I stopped forcing myself to carry everything. And the strangest part? They're starting to carry a little bit, too. Last week, Noah texted me a picture of his test score. Math, his worst subject. Big red, 88, in the corner. I sent a thumbs up. He replied, "Thanks. That's it. No, sir. No, Dad. Just thanks." And that was enough. A few days ago, Brooke came home late and caught me changing the oil in the driveway. She sat on the curb. Didn't ask why. "Just Saturday, you're still mad at me?" she asked eventually. "No," I said. She nodded. Good. She didn't say anything else. But she didn't leave either. Not perfect, but real. That's the thing about fatherhood, especially the kind that comes after another man's shadow. It's not about blood. It's about presence. But presence without respect? That's not love. That's servitude. I spent years being present, paying, giving, absorbing. I thought patience would earn me a seat at the table. That consistency would buy me love. Didn't. Not until I stepped away. Not until I stopped being their provider and demanded to be treated like a person instead. They didn't choose me at first. Not when it was easy. But now that there's cost, now that there's weight, they're starting to see. Or at least, they're looking. And that's enough for now. So here's my question to you. Was I wrong? Was I cruel for withdrawing what I gave freely? Was I selfish for wanting acknowledgement? Would you have endured it longer? Or would you have done the same? Because sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away. And sometimes the only way to teach love is to stop giving it away for free.
Bye.